Welcome. As Ms. Maria has a prior engagement, and we run a little bit over with our previous sessions, I'd like her to address the issue of food, water, energy, security. Would you start, please?
Thank you very much. And I was very struck by the speech of Her Excellency because, in my view, bringing these three things together, energy, water and food, in an interlinked manner, it's crucial. I've been a politician for the greater part of my life. I've been a minister in the Netherlands, among others for energy and economic affairs, but also for education and science. So I know the importance of engaging young people, engaging also scientists to find solutions for what you want to achieve. And, you know, why do I think it's essential? Because putting energy, water, food supply and resilience on the agenda, food and water security in arid environments, it's sometimes extremely difficult. And these two basic resources are not a given in this region, but energy is fossil and, as we know, also non-fossil. Why are they interlinked and why are they important for all people? Because many wars have been fought to gain access to and control over these resources, and many migration waves were, are and continue to be rooted in having no access to these resources and consequently being deprived of economic development and welfare. Now, some countries like UAE countries, they have abundant energy, fossil or renewables, but they lack fresh water. They lack sufficient food, domestic food production, and some, like the Netherlands, that's my country, well, we manage, although we are very small, we manage to be major food producers, and we have developed and possessed a profound knowledge of water management for centuries already. I think it's very important to meet the demand of the growing food, energy and water supply, and it's critical to see that the stresses on and between energy, water and food are approached in an integrated fashion. Why? Because many are aware of the problems of these issues, but attempts to find solutions are often fragmented and focus on one aspect of the nexus without analyzing what effects it will bring to other aspects of this nexus. So only an integrated approach, both within and amongst countries, will bring sustainable solutions to cope with the challenge of these nexus. They vary, of course, from one location to the other, the challenges and the solutions, because of differences in climate impact, national and financial resources. So what we need to do is to develop best practices and subsequently share them. And in my view, Masdar City is an excellent living lab to do this, because there you bring all this knowledge together, and keeping it as a living lab also sees that it's modern, all the time ahead of all kind of developments. Now, although there are by no means a panacea, I think new renewable energy technologies like solar and wind technology, they offer new opportunities. They are emission-free. They do not require water for cooling, so they are therefore much less vulnerable to droughts. And I think it's important to mention that. But when you have abundant clean energy, when you have sufficient fresh water, the production of food comes into the side again. And we have the experience on highly efficient and productive agriculture. That's possible in conditioned environments, whether they are arid or whether they are other extreme circumstances. It's achievable, it's done. It's been done in greenhouses like the Netherlands demonstrate, being, I have to say, with top export of agriculture and horticultural production. We have this further improvement in water management in agriculture and horticulture. That's achievable by using sensor technology. I know somebody on this panel is very, very experienced on that. Sensor technology, drip irrigation, supported by information and communication technologies. We have recycle of wastewater in general, and the use of CO2 from the energy sector in greenhouses. It's demonstrated. There's an increased use in aquatic culture. It looks promising also in the light of new ways of proteins and thus food production by, for instance, cultivating algae. And for the future, I think it's absolutely necessary to develop this IT, to develop big data, to develop the big data analysis, but also the access to it, so that we can have it free, to improve the circularity of agriculture. Now, this is my last remark. In 2020, At Dubai Expo, the Netherlands will choose this energy, water, food nexus as a topic. And given the expertise and knowledge of our research institutes, universities, private sector, businesses, governance structures like water authorities and others, well, you know, this cannot come as a surprise. And we will start to prepare that quite soon. And the focus will be on an integrated approach for a larger area, how to realize the best synergy of the production and use of water, energy, food in a certain area. But there are quite a few extra new challenges of this approach. The knowledge of interaction, the knowledge of interaction and interdependence of energy, water, food production, use and resources. That's again the importance of Masdar as a living lab. Digitizing and modeling the management and use of these resources and creating a bottom-up governance structure including all stakeholders. And I hope that with this contribution also in not only here but also towards 2020, we can also contribute to the goals of 2021 when the United Emirates will have the festivities of being a country for 50 years. And I think this shows also our commitment from my country, from our structures, from our structural institutions to what is happening in this part of the world. Thank you very much for your attention. And yes, I will be getting a signal and then I'll have to leave. I'm very sorry to say so.
Thank you. You were with us, the former Minister of Economic Affairs of the Kingdom of Netherlands, former Executive Director of International Energy Agency, Maria van der Hoeven. Thank you very much. And we're unfortunate to lose you earlier.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So my next, I will address this point with you, Mr. Lee. Like, as we look ahead at 2018, much progress has been made in reducing hunger and poverty and improving food security and nutrition. Yet, major concerns and challenges persist, such as population growth. In 2050, the population would be 9.7 billion. What does it look like to feed 9.7 billion people?
Yeah, I think there's a competition between technology and this growth. You know, I'm from the engineering side of it, technology basically. And it's been more than 50 years since Jack Kelby had, Texas Instrument invented integrated circuit. And every one of us here actually are looking at this benefit of it. It changes human life and transforms human life fundamentally. And at the same time, actually, this technology will show new way of innovation to deal with these problems. Actually, it was agriculture which triggered this technology first. And then technology will trigger more advancement in this agriculture as well. Nowadays, as you pointed out, there's a lot of problems that is generated because of the industrialization, growth of the population, which is very rapid. But at the same time, this technology is taking up. It's exponentially growing as well. For example, we can talk about sensor technology based on ICT and semiconductor manufacturing technology. There are more and more smart sensors around the world nowadays. So by using these sensors, actually, we can monitor environment and then look at how this climate change will have an impact on this. I have been with the medical diagnostics industry for a while, and this medical diagnostics industry has advanced a lot because of this technology. And people are actually having this diagnostics kit for detecting disease, cancers, a lot of advancements in technologies there. Also, there are needle devices that can be implanted into the brain and sense what kind of signals in there. They can cure some kind of a neuro disease as well. Well, I would suggest that if we can apply such technology to human beings and animals, why cannot we apply such technology for plants and trees all over the world, and monitor this climate change, and then, find some kind of measure against it.
Okay, what about the arid regions? What about countries who cannot afford that technology, Dr. Majid? How can we have that food diversity in those regions?
So I think the assumption that technology will be the panacea is has its limitations in its thinking. When you're looking at arid lands, they were not always arid. There are the ideas of rehabilitating land so that you can grow, and that a lot of what is consumed globally is not in very high-tech sort of agricultural practices. The other thing is also how we define agriculture. I think most of the crowd will agree that the first thing they think of when I say agriculture is rolling hills of green. And here in this region, we need to perhaps redefine or innovate what agriculture looks like, how it's practiced. Closed system farming where the environment is too harsh, or where you have marginal lands or some transition of the territories. Take advantage of the lands you do have that are capable and really capitalize on that. So there's a land use aspect, and there's also an efficiency aspect. Where you have agriculture practiced, are you being as resource efficient as you could be? Whether technology or non-technological methods are involved, I think there's still a lot of gains to be had in this region that we haven't capitalized on.
Okay, so Mr. Chen, what agriculture opportunities in food supply can you see happening in the arid regions?
So first of all, I think it's important to realize that when you use the term arid region, it isn't just the Middle East. It is China. China is considered one of the largest arid regions in the world. And given the drought that most people know about in California, which is the salad basket of the United States, that too is an arid region. So this is now a universal set of issues that will become exacerbated by climate change. We're an investment firm, and I'll just tell you a little story. A few weeks ago, we were sitting in front of a investor and talking about our sustainable agriculture strategies, and a question came up for one of our greenhouse investment teams, and it was, how many acre feet does it take of water for an acre of greenhouse? And our investment manager was frankly stumped. He couldn't answer the question. It was rather embarrassing, actually, and because he's supposed to be an expert in farming. And about 5 minutes later, he said, you know, we never get the question, how many acre feet per acre? And an acre feet of water is 1 acre of water 1 foot deep. That's a lot of water. He said, we, in our greenhouses, we always measure kilograms per liter. And so it's a very, very different mental concept of the efficiency of water utilization. So in that context, you know, you ask what kinds of opportunities there are. I would say that when we talk about agriculture today, we think about two forces that are working to change and create investment opportunities. One is a set of mega trends that are taking place, and I'll just name the 3 top ones in our mind. And these are universal now across almost every economy. Ready to eat, which is convenience, and as the world moves increasingly to working couples and working families, middle class, ready to eat consumption. The second thing is food safety, and the third is supply chain resiliency. And that's become a universal issue. And then there are 4 resource constraints that are changing agriculture. The first is really the most obvious one, and that's land and urbanization. Is it farm? Is it city? Second one is water. But the next 2 are not so obvious, and that is climate change is oftentimes thought of as being hotter. It isn't hotter that you worry about, and it's not temperature that you worry about. It's actually humidity patterns and light patterns. And climate change is changing both. And the fourth one is also something that we never think about, and that's access to labor. And so when you put all that together, those 2 forces, market forces as well as resource constraint forces, we see a tremendous investment opportunity that's taking place today across the globe in agriculture. And that's in distributed agriculture, regionality of agriculture. It's what you grow and where you grow it, and that's changing significantly the issue of food security. It's automation. dealing with labor and dealing with efficiency. And so robotics is coming to the area of agriculture. And case in point would be modern day greenhouse growing, a la what the Dutch have been doing. Optimization technologies. Controlled environment is one that we're personally very, very much an advocate of, and that is things like vertical farms, horizontal greenhouses, and then plant genetics and plant species diversity. And in a very ironic way, as we move back to regionality, back to controlled environment, we'll actually see more diversity come back in what we grow, because much of what we have grown has been focused for the last 30, 40 years on centralized productivity. And now as we move to regional productivity, efficiency, local taste, we're now moving back to diversity. So we're very excited by what we see as the changes taking place in agriculture, but also the investment opportunities there.
I would come back to the vertical farms and talk about it, but water seems here to be the big challenge in hot and dry regions. What developments do you see happening that could help or ensure the food security and water, Mr. Johan?
Okay, so if you want to use water wisely, you have to look at how this agriculture is going on. Actually, in many cases, the use of water for agriculture is not very efficient. For instance, you irrigate, on the farm, then you will lose a lot of water as a drain, So what you can do with this water use for agriculture, for example, is that by using high-performance sensors, small sensors, many of them implanted into plants, and then monitor this water use, and then use this information data for irrigation as well, so that you can minimize the drain rate of this water. So in this sense, probably, maybe some country have good access to this high-tech sensor system. Others probably are not. But the beauty of this new technology, for example, semiconductor technology, is that when scaled up, the price becomes lower and lower. Many years ago, not many countries had an access and benefit from the use of smartphones. But nowadays, everybody's using it because it became cheaper and available everywhere. So basically, if you develop this technology in large scale, you can use such technology for solving these water problems, in arid area as well.
I can see you agree, Dr. Majid. What's your take on that?
So when we're talking about water, there's a lot of talk about consumption side, but actually being able to harvest water is also a critical question. Where are we getting water from? Most people will immediately look down or look to the sea, whether we're doing desal or we're drawing it up from our aquifers. But everybody this morning, I assumed, had to drive through the fog, and that is a lot of water in the air. That is essentially what fog is. And accessibility to that water as a source, or to water in, say, flood regions. You have a lot of heavy downpour in mountain regions that just washes into the sea, And if you're not harvesting that and essentially drawing out this supply over the year or over your geographic area, you're losing out on a natural source that is year on year pretty much going to happen. So that's the supply side. And then also the efficiency of supply, how you're managing that supply, and then the consumption. Yes, technology as well as other practices. We were just talking about different cultivars, different types of plants. So are they drought resistant? Do they have the ability to store water, use water more efficiently? It always helps to be able to get data to measure that. But there's a lot of information that's already present, whether beyond the internet or in literature, about which cultivars are more appropriate for geography, and really assessing localities of where you are growing, what you're doing with your critical, or what I call the common denominator, which is water, with your crop and your agriculture practice.
Well, now the region reuses less than 20% of its wastewater, as noted in a recent report. This low level presents maybe opportunities. Mr. Chen, what opportunities do you see from this wastewater?
Yeah, the statistic that even today was used is that upwards of 70% of the country's water is used for agriculture. The truth of the matter is that most of that is actually flushed. It's lost to the atmosphere or it goes into the soil. And so as an example, in an advanced greenhouse, high-tech greenhouse, it's just a little bit of an exaggeration, but the water that is consumed by the plant is what is shipped in the carton, the lettuce or the pepper. So most of these are now approximately 95% water efficient. And so you're basically recycling the water. So the issue with agriculture is not so much its use of water. The issue with agriculture is the efficiency of water and the technologies that allow for reuse and for recapture of the water. And so the opportunity for quote-unquote saving of water is tremendous. And the thing is, that technology is available today, and that's frankly what's in practice in Northern Europe.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. Professor Lee, as Mr. Chen said, that this technology is here today. Where can we see ourselves until 2050, when we have maybe climate changes, as you said, as one of the speakers said earlier, the future is not unpredictable, especially with human pattern and trends.
Well, one of the most important signs of the climate change is how plants react to such climate change. For instance, in Korea, there has been some plant that's growing very well, but because of the temperature rise, suddenly such plants could not survive. And it is actually after these plants dies that we find that such climate change occur. So what we can do is actually we can monitor plants and then look at the detail of their fingerprint reaction to the climate. Then we can actually extract out very valuable information about how this weather, climate is affecting the whole globe as well. So basically, we can also always learn from the nature. Nature knows much better than us. They spend, many millions or billions of years of adaptation. So climate change is part of this adaptation. The lack of water is part of this adaptation as well. So I think we can actually look at this nature and then see how this climate change is actually adapted.
So, food security, again, food and water are connected. So who is responsible? Whose responsibility is food security, Dr. Majid?
So I know that when the word food security is used, most people will say, well, that's a government thing, that's a government initiative. I think the challenge with food security is that there's been a big gap now between the consumer and the food that they are consuming. So really, food security is not only everyone's prerogative, everybody's issue, everybody needs to be aware, but we need to close the gap again between where food is being produced, where it's coming from, how it's being produced, and the consumer. Now, as a government, our job really is to be able to make that available and re-engage the dialogue. There used to be a time where you got your meat from the butcher and you got your bread from the baker. And today you get everything from the retailer, from the supermarket. Now, a lot of retailers are working to re-engage, but I think it's awareness work on everybody's part, but the more consumers can reconnect to where food comes from, food waste and loss will be reduced. You get a better understanding of the value of everything from water to every vegetable that passes out. It's awareness that you need at a national level, and it's not easy to just assume that somebody will take care of that and I'll just have my food, and when I'm done I will just get. So really closing the gap between the primary producer, which are the farmers. I'm not talking about the journey all the way there, but the guys who are putting the time in the field. And the issue here is that the average age of farmers globally is around the 50s. And that's scary because the assumption there is, who's going to be farming for us in 30 years if no young people are interested, or the few people that are interested? So getting younger people back into agriculture, getting them back involved into what it takes to grow something. Now, I was talking this morning about some of the key elements to agriculture. There's one that's also rarely talked about, which is time. It's not instant. Plants take time to grow. There's a lot of work to speed things up, but you're only going to get so much that you can consume, and that does involve time and the inputs. So making that apparent, making that clear to the consumer will change behaviors that can ensure you're reducing the pressures of food security.
Okay, so about vertical farms, since we are speaking about farmers, and I told you that I'm going to get back to that subject, what opportunities are there around vertical farms? Are these a viable solution for feeding population at scale?
Yeah, I think vertical farms are just the latest in a wide breadth of what we would categorize as controlled environment farming, or controlled environment foods. And that includes everywhere from what is currently state-of-the-art in high-tech production today. For example, most of Europe eats their tomato or their pepper grown in a hydroponic greenhouse. In Europe right now, there's about 50,000 acres of high-tech production, and that's really how you get your tomato, your cucumber, your aubergine, your peppers, and increasingly your lettuces. And so the vertical greenhouse is just the latest part of that solution set that's out there. It's early. The cost curves aren't quite there yet, but we're excited by the kinds of new techniques and technologies that will blaze. But we're also equally excited by the production agriculture that's coming out of high-tech greenhouses, coming out of the latest generations of aquaculture, and other forms of controlled environment foods. So we think that this is really the next wave of what's happening in the global food system.
Okay, Professor Lee, this is my last question for you all. I just like to take your take first.
Sure.
What do you think is a holistic solution for food security?
Well, I fully agree with what Dr. Qassimi said regarding the problem with producers, food producers. There are less and less number of producers around the world. And the solution to that, it might be probably distributed production. Each and every one around the world should be able to produce their own food. For example, I can point out urban farming. In South Korea, we have a lot of cities, well urbanized, so people actually want to grow their own food in the backyard of their apartment. Now the problem is the data. They really don't know when to irrigate, when to give the nutrients to these plants. And so far, a lot of companies around the world, a lot of institutes around the world accumulated humongous amount of data regarding these plants, growth, agriculture, farming. I think that needs to be distributed. And more data, more knowledge should be produced so that many people can have an access and then start their farming immediately if they like. And this will solve a lot of problems regarding this producer, consumer problems. So technology is there already, data is there. I think it should be shared by many people.
Dr. Majid, what
Yeah.
is?
So I'll borrow from both our colleagues here on the panel. It really is a solution set. Okay, holistic, you need a number of different ideas to come together. You're not going to have a panacea. There isn't going to be one solution that covers it all. Vertical farming won't do that, but it is opening the door to a lot of different thinking on agriculture. And whether it's in the field or in a closed system or if it's in your backyard, which I agree, everybody can do their part. The danger, as I was alluding to before, which was again expressed by Professor Lee, is the losing of the knowledge. And yes, we all have an iPhone, or we all have, or almost all have access to information. The idea that that information can be permeated through the general populace and different systems can start essentially taking place in niches, whether it's on the rooftop of a building, your backyard, Even around the corner in the house where you've just got this dead space, and then you realize, well, you know, a little herb garden wouldn't do too bad here. And getting us closer again. We may be doing a little bit, it won't feed us, but it makes us conscious about how we consume. And I think that's how you're going to get a holistic approach, is to get the information to be everywhere and the awareness to be everywhere.
Dr. Chen, would you like to add to that?
Sure. Food is nutrition, but it's also culture, and it's also an economy, and it's a marketplace. And as much as we always focus on the 800 million in the world that is undernourished, we should also realize that 7 billion people also are in that growing population that gets to enjoy the food of their culture. And so part of the modern next generation food system is going to focus, I think, as much as we are concerned about food security, we're going to be focused on food sovereignty. And that is making sure that we have access to the regional foods and the cultural foods that we have. And I think what's very exciting about the kinds of changes that are taking place in our agricultural system today is that we are bringing regionality back in. We are taking the water stress, the energy stress, and in the cases of greenhouses, we're taking the land stress out of the picture that has, for the last 30 or 40 years, determined what we eat.
Thank you, my dear panelists, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen.